Jet Set Radio is a great game, and any complaints I had don't really ruin it for me in any way. While I don't think the controls age perfectly, and there are a lot of quirks and questionable game design decisions, it's a good game for those who want to get good at it. While sales of this game didn't end up being abysmal, I don't think it was the success Sega expected. You know, it was on the Dreamcast, so it makes sense that it didn't sell that well. So, what would happen if you put this game on a console that did sell well? How about a Nintendo console? Well, guess what? That did happen in 2003. Just not on the Nintendo console you would expect. It's a great idea, right? Porting Jet Set Radio to another console with the GameCube controller. You would think the GameCube would be an obvious choice for something like this. It has cartoony and beautiful games like Wind Waker. It has a great controller. This game would fit right at home. Nope, they ported this to the fucking Game Boy Advance. Nothing in my life makes sense anymore. Like, really? The Game Boy Advance, like, why? This is like Super Monkey Ball Jr. all over again. But the most mysterious part of this port is that no one really talks about it, to the point where the Wikipedia page doesn't even say this is the final release in the series. And I think in part, it's not acknowledged as a Jet Set Radio entry because this game isn't unique, it doesn't have its own identity, and of course it just bears the same name, despite being referred to as Jet Set Radio Advance. So I think a lot of people just consider it a port, and it kind of is, but it's tough for me to say it's fully a port because, well, I don't know, compare these two games side by side and tell me these aren't different games. Technically, it does meet the description of a port. It's more like a demake, I guess. So I will accept it as one of those for the sake of this review. And yeah, there are the same levels, same characters, same story, same tutorial, even some of the same unlicensed songs make it over, which while very compressed, it's still neat. So yeah, it's kind of fair people ignore this game, but at the same time, it kind of blows my mind there's at least sort of a Jet Set Radio game pretty much no one talks about. And it could have been a really good clickbait title and video too, but who would do something like that? Jet Set Radio Advance was released in 2003 and ported by Vicarious Visions, who were responsible for porting the Tony Hawk games to the Game Boy Advance. There isn't too much information on the development of this game either, so I can't even begin to tell you why or how this game came to be. And you know, even if there was information, I still don't think I would really understand why. And I don't think it sold that well either. Now, my source here may not be entirely accurate, but the literal only information on sales I could find for this port was a poopy little graph on the VG Charts website, which says that this game sold 30,000 copies. I get that VG Charts isn't the most accurate, but there's no other information I could find on it. So I'm going with this, even if it's not correct. I don't think this game was a success, but I think this time around it's a bit more warranted. To be positive for a moment, the game looks really good for a Game Boy Advance game. It has previously mentioned bits of the songs. It's faithful for a Game Boy Advance game, but there's just one problem. At least in my opinion, it doesn't control well at all. They tried too hard to be like the original game, and I think they would have just been better off trying to make a 2D side-scroller or something of the sort that uses similar assets. We see this in some type of movie games, like when they make a Game Boy Advance port. You get the 3D one on console, and then the Game Boy Advance port is just kind of like a cheaper, easier side-scroller. But here they were just like, nah, do whatever it takes, put that game on a Game Boy Advance. But yeah, the controls are tremendously awkward. To me, at least, it's apparently the same control scheme as the GBA Tony Hawk games, which I guess some fans say ends up working well, so I imagine that you could get good at this game if you put the time in, but at least as a casual player who doesn't care for these type of games, I think this control scheme is horrible, honestly. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say about it. It's Jet Set Radio, but downgraded. There really is no reason to play this game over the Dreamcast version. In fact, that's probably why it died to history. It's not unique. Jet Set Radio on GBA doesn't have its own identity.